I am ready for a breath, Lord, with you, with your love, Seigneur, with the foot of thy own Jesus. Center of the dance, Son of the Father, and the Son of the Holy Spirit. Continue with the sacrament of confession. And we speak about contrition today, and mainly the difference between perfect and imperfect contrition. Perfect contrition implies a fervent love of God. We are sorry for our sins because they displease God, because God is somehow sad, because he's so good, because he has some expectations and he's disappointed with us, because we make our father to cry, our mother to cry. And we make Jesus to suffer, and the Blessed Virgin Mary to lose her son. You can see, perfect contrition is about a fervent love. Mary Magdalene is a perfect example of this contrition. Her contrition was so perfect, actually, that she never sinned again. It was sincere. And she could follow Jesus up to the foot of the cross and be there standing next by. Now, our contrition is perfect when we are sorry for our sins, because sin offends God, whom we love above all things, for his own sake. Or even if God was never to send us to hell, never to send us to purgatory, never even to punish us, we could not afford to make God sad, because God is so good that we don't want to hurt his heart. A child who is obeying just because he will be beaten by the parents, he's obeying, he does what he has to do, but his love is poor. He is quite selfish. He is obeying because he fears to be beaten. But it's not good enough, of course. We don't want even this kind of obedience. We want the heart of the child to be good. We want the heart of the child to be loving. And we want this child to do what is right in order to make his parents happy. This is what is to love. This is our law of love, is to do things well because they make God happy, and because they please God, because they rejoice the heart of our Father. And this, somehow, it's joining the three different conceptions of sin. We could understand sin as just someone who has disobeyed the law, but the law maybe is even meaningless. It could be the opposite, actually. But I have crossed the red traffic light. I have broken the law. Yes. But maybe the law is even not meaningful. Maybe it was really nobody, it was night. I could just have passed, and I passed. Yes, I have broken the law, but the law was not even meaningful at this moment. Or we can understand sin as to break a law, but this law is extremely meaningful. Because there is a law that we should not put diesel in a petrol car. But if you break this law, you also break the car. Okay? This law is very meaningful. This law is what we call a natural law. It depends on the nature of things. And if you don't respect a natural law, you destroy this nature. If you take a fish out of water and you put it in your bedroom, on your bed, it will die. Because you are breaking a natural law. But this law, when you break it, it has consequences. The fish will die. You can see this is a sin, but you understand this sin now, it's more meaningful than just to break a law that's a red traffic light, green traffic light, orange. All these colors could be different, actually. It's not so meaningful. It's just a convention. But petrol or diesel in the engine of the car is not a convention. It's a necessity. The fish to be in water is a necessity. And now if you go against that, you sin, you break a law, and immediately it has a bad consequence. This is it is a natural law. And that is maybe a second way to understand sin as breaking a natural law. Breaking the way we have to work and to damage ourselves. But this is not even enough, because maybe for that you don't need perfect contrition to be sorry for this kind of sin. It's okay, I've made a mistake, I have learned from my mistake, I will not do it again. That is not perfect contrition. It is just imperfect contrition. But now, perfect contrition is another understanding of sin. What is sin? Sin is to make your parents to cry about you. It's to make your mother to cry because you have broken the heart of your mother. This is deeper now, okay? You affect someone when you do what is wrong. And you affect someone because this someone is loving you. Because if this someone was just a foreigner, someone you meet in the street, you even don't know him, and he's not happy with the way you are dressed, you don't care, you know? You don't care because who is this someone? And you dress the way you want. But if you displease someone you love, you hurt someone who is loving you. And now you displease. And sin is actually to hurt someone who is loving you. And the more this person is loving you, the more he is interested on you, the more he has done for you, the more you offend him, the more you make him sad if you despise this person. No, you are disappointed when we have high expectations. If you don't have expectations, you are not disappointed. You have said, I have always said this guy was bad, and he has turned to be bad. I told you he was bad. And you're not disappointed. Because you knew. And you are not expecting more from this guy. But maybe your own child, you have educated with so much love, with so much money, so much care, and this child is disappointing you, you cry. You feel bad. Your heart is broken. And this is what is a sin. Is actually to disappoint God. A God who has loved you so much. And now you understand what is perfect contrition. Perfect contrition is not to say, oh, sorry, I have broken the rule of the game. Oh, sorry, I've made a mistake, I will not do it again. No. Perfect contrition is to tell God, you have been crying because of me. I have broken your heart. I'm so sorry to have broken your heart. I'm so sorry to have made you cry. You are loving me so much, and I have despised your love. This is what is perfect contrition. The contrition arises from a pure and perfect love of God. If we have a perfect love of God, our contrition for sins will be perfect. Thus, we shall be sorry, not only because we fear punishment or dread the loss of His gifts, but because we offend the good God. It ought not to be difficult for us to have a perfect love of God. We generally love our parents not for the food and clothes they give us, but for themselves. Because we see their self-sacrifice and unselfishness and other good qualities. And if we can love our parents spontaneously, not for any reward we expect or punishment we wish to avoid, why can we not love God, who is infinitely more lovable than our parents? Actually, another definition of sin is to love more what is less. It is to love more than God something that is less than God. An example of that is, imagine that you really want to gift someone you love with money, and you tell him, okay, I can give you 100 bob, but I wish to give you 1 million, that you can start your life well. And you really expect the person to accept your gift. And now he said, no, I prefer this 100 bob. But this is not making sense. How can you prefer 100 bob? There is less value there. How can you choose what is less? It's not making sense. It's a scandal somehow. How can you love more what is less? This is what we do with God when we sin. We love more something material, and we love God less than something very limited. And this is, of course, offending God, to be despised. Actually, we are telling God, you are not so important. To go and play football on Sunday morning is much more important than to go to Mass. God is not so important. Football is more important than God. This is actually what is sin, is to love something more than God, when God is the best and should be loved better, of course. Is it easy to make an act of perfect contrition sincerely? It is easy if we sincerely wish to love God. We can excite ourselves to it by thinking of what he has done for us, for his sufferings, for his passion, for God the Father giving us God the Son, for the redemption of our souls. How many blessings he has given to us, how much he has guided our life. And we can, through memory, grow in our hearts this gratitude. And the more we meditate about the goodness of God for us, the more we feel inclined to love Him, of course. It's important to meditate on what is good, to meditate on the gift of God. It's important to be grateful, to thank a lot in our prayers, because the more we do, the more we grow our love. By thinking of God's gift, we realize a little the goodness of God and His worthiness to be loved for His own sake. We then feel sorry for having offended our benefactor. When we do an act of perfect contrition, it takes away sin immediately. Of course, because an act of contrition is an act of perfect love. If you love God perfectly, you are a friend of God. Yeah. This love is destroying the sins. But remember that we still have a process for the mortal sins. There is always a process for a mortal sin. Remember this example I was giving you? If you slap your mother and you leave home, you cannot come back for lunch and eat chapati. No. Because now, to be forgiven from that, you need to go through a process. You cannot just come back and say hello, or say sorry, and you start eating, you know? If you have beaten your mother, I think you have to be beaten a lot before to come back in this home, okay? There is a process now. And this is what it is for a mortal sin, okay? You can be sorry in your heart, make an act of perfect contrition, actually recover the charity of God in your heart, okay? But still you have to respect the process. And the process is to go for confession, to humble yourself, to accuse this sin, to recognize it, and to be forgiven. This is the process for a mortal sin. But actually, and we are teaching that, as soon as someone has committed a mortal sin, he should immediately do an act of perfect contrition and not to stay in a state of mortal sin. We should not stay in enmity with God. It's dangerous, actually. It's bad for God, because God is missing us. He is our Father, and if we are not loving God, He is loving us. And if we are not missing God, He is missing us. Because He is loving. He wants our presence. He wants us. For us, we are forgetful, we are busy with our life, we have so many other things, and we forget God and we are happy like that. But God is not happy when His own child has gone and disappeared. This is why, if we do something wrong, let us not stay forever like that, but let us go back to God immediately. This is why we say if someone makes an act of perfect contrition after having committed a mortal sin, and then dies before being able to go to confession, he is saved from hell by the act he made. Let us remember the penitent thief, and he said to Jesus, Lord, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And Jesus said to him, Amen, I say to thee, this day thou shalt be with me in paradise. However, we may not receive Holy Communion after committing a mortal sin if we merely make an act of perfect contrition. Because, as we have said, there is a process. And we have to go for confession before to go for communion. The act of perfect contrition means salvation if we die, but without confession, it does not give a right to the sacraments. One reason of that is actually it's even difficult to know the value of your act of contrition. Imagine the sin is very bad. Are you sorry enough? Really? Sincerely? Are you sure? Confession is giving us certitude. Perfect contrition is not. It's difficult to measure it. Okay. Actually, if in your life you have this opportunity, is to attend the death of someone, because maybe you are a doctor, you are a nurse, or at home, a relative, you should always help this person to make an act of perfect contrition before dying. Whatever is the religion, okay? Because any human being can address God and tell him, I am sorry. You know, even if he's an atheist, you can still speak to him, you know? Tell him, ask for forgiveness, you know? This can save a soul. It can save a soul. Don't let someone dying without assistance and without prayer, without advice, without murmuring an act of contrition. We should form the habit of making an act of perfect contrition as often as possible. An act of contrition is not to read the formula. The formula is just a formula. It's not a magic formula. It's not something you have to respect well for, you know. The act of contrition is something in your heart. It's just love in your heart, actually. It's just sorrow in your heart. After, the formula of the act of contrition can be many, can be different, as long as they express this sorrow, they help you, they guide you in the feeling you should have. But an act of contrition is just an act of love. It is your love facing this obstacle between you and God, this obstacle of the sin. Oh my God, I am sorry I ever offended thee, because you are so good and I love thee. Now, When is our contrition imperfect? When we are sorry for our sins because they are hateful in themselves, or because we fear God's punishment. Imperfect contrition is called attrition. The fear of hell is a common motive of attrition. It is a good motive, actually. It is very wise to fear what is bad. There is nothing wrong to fear hell. But it's not the best attitude. Because it comes from the fear of God's punishment and not from pure love. Yeah. A mother sent her 3 young boys to take a big jar of honey to their grandmother. On the way, the boys stopped to play. They stumbled over the jar, breaking it and spilling the honey. They all began to weep. The first said, "Mother will surely spank us." The second cried, "She will be so displeased, she will give us no cookies." And the third wept, "Mother will surely be sad." You have the different level of contrition, okay? The last one is, of course, more perfect. The first one fears the punishment, the second, the loss of reward. And the child is only thinking about the sadness of his mother. It doesn't mean the other boy don't love their mother. They are loving their mother. But it's not perfect. Love has not chased fear. This is why an act of attrition, if you go for confession with imperfect contrition, it is enough to be forgiven. If you don't go for confession, it's not enough. You need the perfect contrition. If you cannot go. But if you go for confession, imperfect contrition or attrition is sufficient. For a worthy reception of the sacrament of penance. An act of attrition cannot obtain forgiveness of mortal sin without the absolution of the priest. But of course, it's better for us when we prepare for confession to develop perfect contrition and not just to go for confession because you don't want to go to hell. You can do better than that. And we should always, of course, excite in our heart this perfect contrition. And we should always go for confession with perfect contrition. It's more pleasing to God. Now the Catechism is introducing another distinction, what he calls the purely servile fear of God. And he says this purely servile fear of God is not sufficient even for imperfect contrition. That is one which makes a person avoid sin only because of the punishment of sin. We call it servile because it is the fear of the slaves. The slaves are supposed not to serve out of love, but out of constraint. And they are forced. This is why we call it servile fear. The slave is serving because he is beaten, because he is jailed, because he cannot escape, because he is threatened. He is not serving out of love. But now, someone who will say, okay, I have committed this sin. I wish to commit it again. I like it. But I have to go for confession because I don't want to go to hell. Even if he says, okay, I will even stop to do this sin because I don't want to go to hell, but I wish I could do. I wish God could not punish me. He is obeying, maybe, but there is no love at all. And this servile fear is not even enough for imperfect contrition. Servile fear does not make the sinner turn away from sin. The fear of God that produces attrition is called filial fear. It is a fear of God's punishment that makes the sinner turn away from his sin and return sincerely to God. It is the fear that a good son who has offended his father seriously feels when he begs forgiveness. So you understand that this imperfect contrition made out of fear, it is a filial fear of God. It means, yes, you fear the punishment, but the fear of the punishment is taking you back to the good track, through your duties, and you embrace and you accept your duties. The servile fear will be this pure fear of punishment when you keep loving what is wrong, but you don't do it just because you don't want to be beaten. And that is not at all good enough for even for imperfect contrition. And remember also a last point. For imperfect contrition, it has also to be a religious sorrow, not a pure natural sorrow. If you have lost your job because you came drunk, and you say, oh, I am sorry to have lost my job, I should not have drunk so much because I have lost my job, this is not a religious sorrow. It's not even enough. It's not contrition. It's not even imperfect contrition, because it is just totally natural. To be contrition, it has to be because of God, even if it's the punishment of God. Oh, God is not happy with me, I have to rectify. Yeah. That is contrition, attrition. It means imperfect contrition. But let us work on our perfect contrition. Let us work on our love of God in order to grow. To grow in this love and in this life.